Well, hello and welcome to our next video looking at Scotland's Reformation and some of the key figures in it. Now this is the second part, looking at John Knox and his part in Scotland's Reformation. The last time we left off, Knox was over in Geneva. He had left England, escaping the persecution of Mary Tudor and the persecution of the Protestants there, and he went over to the continent and made his way to Geneva, meets Calvin there, and becomes the minister of an English-speaking congregation, English refugees. So he's in Geneva, but not all the Protestants who left England during that persecution went over to the continent. Some actually drifted over the border into Scotland. Two notable men were William Harlow and John Willock. Both these men came over and preached in Scotland, and people were being converted under their preaching to the Protestant faith. So work was going on in Scotland whilst Knox was over in Geneva. Now, autumn of 1555, Knox returns back to Scotland. Many think he was actually coming back to get married in Berwick and just to visit some friends in Scotland. We don't know if he was married by this point or not, it's uncertain. But anyway, he comes to Berwick, first of all, Berwick upon Tweed, then comes to Edinburgh. And when he's in the capital, he can't believe the reception he gets and just how the Protestant faith has grown in Scotland since his absence, since the last time he'd left was as a galley slave. So it's been several years now, and he can't believe just the work that's going on in Scotland. So he stays in the capital and preaches in several homes in the city, and many people come to hear him. And he says himself that if he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed it. What's happening in Scotland. So this kicks off a little preaching tour in Scotland, and for the next few months Knox travels around Scotland preaching the gospel, and many people come to hear him preaching. In May 1556 he's summoned by the Roman Catholic authorities to Edinburgh to come in and give an account of himself. Now they obviously don't expect him to turn up, because when they see him coming, and with many of his supporters, they disappear. So there's no trial, and Knox is just left alone, and he uses the opportunity again to just continue preaching in Edinburgh, which he does. Now, not long after that, he receives a letter from his congregation in Geneva saying, "Look, you're our minister. We want you to come back." So he preaches a few more times in Scotland. One of the last places he preaches is the beautiful Castle Campbell up in near Dollar, and after that he preaches there. He goes over to Geneva in July 1556, takes his wife with him and his mother-in-law, and settles down to life as a minister to that church in Geneva. And he loves his time in Geneva. He has two children born to him there as well. But in Scotland, things are still moving ahead. Some of those nobles that Knox had been preaching to, those Protestant nobles, had formed themselves in 1557 into the Lords of the Congregation, as they called themselves, and they were becoming the leaders of the Protestants in Scotland. And they drew up the first bond or covenant in Scotland to say that they're going to change Scotland and to reform the church and make Scotland Protestant. Now, various other things are also happening in Scotland, which is making the Reformation move forward. In 1558, a man called Walter Milne, he is an ex-Roman Catholic priest who's converted, preaches the gospel round about St Andrews area, and well loved by the people. Now, he's 82 years of age. That's quite an age in the 1500s. So he's very well respected. But he's arrested and burned at the stake in St Andrews, and that causes a lot of trouble for the Roman Catholic Church there, just because of who this man was, Walter Milne, and how well liked he was. And also, the Roman Catholic Church in Scotland at this time is starting to lose its power. There's various things that's causing that. The Bible is getting easier to get hold of in our own language. Protestant pamphlets have been smuggled in from the continent on ships. There's plays being written and ballads poking fun at the superstition and the ignorance of those in the Roman Catholic Church. And so it's really starting to lose the power and the influence that it has over just the common people here in Scotland. Also, down in England, there's a change down there. Mary Tudor, Bloody Mary, she dies in 1558. So Elizabeth I is now the Queen of England, and she's Protestant. So over in Geneva, Knox's English congregation no longer need to stay in Geneva. They can come back to England, and many of them do. 1559, Knox is preparing to come back to Scotland because he's received a letter from the nobles, these Protestant lords of the congregation, to come back to Scotland. They need a leader. So Knox returns in 1559 back to Scotland, and he makes his way up to Dundee and joins with those Protestants there, then goes to Perth and stays there. Now when he's there, he's preaching in Perth against idolatry, and his sermon starts a riot, and there's a riot in the town in Perth, and the idols are pulled down, and there's a lot of destruction. Now, the person in Scotland who's governing Scotland is Mary of Guise. When Knox came back to Scotland, he found Scotland divided into two camps. You had the lords of the congregation and the Protestants on one side. You had Mary of Guise, Mary Queen of Scots' mother, who was governing Scotland on her daughter's behalf, and the Catholics, and a large proportion of French troops here in Scotland. She was effectively wanting to make Scotland just a part of France. So, Mary of Guise, she hears about the riot in Perth, sends her troops up to deal with it. And they agree with the Protestants that the Protestants can leave and things will be okay. But when Mary of Guise's troops actually go into Perth, their behaviour is very bad, and their treatment of the people there causes a lot of trouble. And a lot of people who were on the side of Mary of Guise, and some of those who were sitting on the fence because of the treatment of her troops, actually switch sides and join with those Protestants. Now those Protestants and the lords of the congregation make their way down to St Andrews, and Knox preaches to them there in St Andrews, and their numbers are increasing. Eventually both sides make their way down to Edinburgh. Mary of Guise and her French troops hold the port town of Leith. Now Leith was very heavily defended, large thick defensive walls at that time, so her troops are holding there. And the Protestants, they've got Edinburgh, but they're trying to get the French out of Leith, and it's too difficult. They're really struggling to do so, and they're starting to get dejected. Numbers are drifting away from the Protestant army, and things are not going well. At one point, they're forced to leave Edinburgh because things just look like they're falling apart. And they retire back to Stirling, and it really looks as if the Reformation's finished. They're so disheartened, the lords of the congregation and the Protestants, that they're ready to throw in the towel. But this is when Knox again comes to the forefront, because he preaches to them in Stirling, probably one of his most important sermons, and he really turns them round. He says, he tells them God sometimes allows the wicked to flourish over the righteous, and it's not because that God's angry at them, but God's want them to trust more in Him, to repent and to trust in the Lord. And it has an amazing effect on the Protestant leaders. They're turned around and they're rejuvenated and refreshed and ready to continue the work of Reformation. And that's what they do. Again, their numbers are increasing, and they make their way back towards Edinburgh and to the siege of Leith. Now, the Protestants are big in numbers, but low in resources. The French, on the other hand, are very, very well equipped and capable. And there's little prospect, despite many attacks of the Protestants, getting the French out of Leith. But behind the scenes, Knox again is taking a leading role, and he's negotiating with England, and he's trying to convince Elizabeth I that it's in England's and hers best interest to help these Scots Protestants get rid of the French Catholics from Scotland, because not only did Mary of Guise want Scotland to be a part of France, but she also had her eye on the throne of England for her daughter Mary of Guise, and so she was a real threat to Elizabeth's throne and the Protestants in England. So it took a bit of convincing, but eventually she did agree, and she sent some weapons and men and money north to help the Scots Protestants. However, this combined force of Scottish and English Protestants still had little success in getting the French out of Leith. The walls of Leith were just so formidable. But in June 1560, up in Edinburgh Castle, Mary of Guise dies, and this really brings to an end the siege of Leith. There's an agreement called the Treaty of Edinburgh, where the English and the French both agree to leave the Scots to themselves, which they do. The French leave, the English go back to England, and Scotland's free to reform the church. And in August 1560, Parliament in Scotland passes various acts getting rid of the Pope and his authority over Scotland. It outlaws the Mass as well. It asks John Knox and other reformers in Scotland to come up with a confession of faith, which they do in a very short period of time. They draw up the Scots Confession of Faith, which lays out what the people in Scotland, what the Church in Scotland believes with regards to the Word of God and its statement of faith. Shortly after that, the first book of discipline is drawn up, and the first book of discipline speaks about how the church is going to be governed, how the church is going to be democratic, also how the church is going to be involved in matters of education. They want a school set up in every parish. They want to look after the poor and various other things. So the Reformation in Scotland is complete. But as we'll see, this young Reformed church, Protestant church in Scotland, is far from secure. And we'll look at that in the next video. And we'll see just the dangers that this young Protestant church is in. So, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I look forward to bringing the next one to you shortly. So, thank you.